Hunter S. Thompson and How the Counterculture Was Hijacked, June 12, 2024. Throughout the 1970s and 1960s, much of the same resentment and anger we feel today was present, although not in the form we see today. The 1970s and 60s saw the horrors of the Vietnam War, as well as the troubles in Northern Ireland. This created a generation of young people so overexposed to warfare and the bloated arms of the state that it created a groundswell the likes of which we have not seen for years, although only echoes remain in the present. In order to change attitudes, it is vital that those people carry themselves in a way and speak in a way that offers an alternative to the prevailing culture. Thus, in a way, an inverse of it. This, of course, led to the counterculture movement, which offered people a new perspective, one of peace, civil rights, and small government. An antithesis to the prevailing culture of taxpayer-subsidised warfare and puritanical tyrants who believed that Marilyn Manson was responsible for school shootings, and that the state should forcibly divide cultures on the basis of skin tone, despite the prevailing culture not seeing through the eyes of race and accepting everyone, provided they met the same standards as everyone else. The counterculture, upon its founding, was, at its heart, an anti-government movement, with some people even describing themselves as anarchists. It targeted wholeheartedly the military-industrial complex and the state's monopoly on violence, its main figure, of course, being the legendary Hunter S. Thompson, which many say is a gun-toting madman with a craving for illicit substances, which, in and of itself, of course, is obviously true, but when it comes to Thompson, people must look at the whole picture. Thompson was incredibly smart, despite all of his excessive drink and drug use, and spoke of people living under less control of the government. He created the counterculture's biggest export, which was that of gonzo journalism, a movement that still exists and was on major TV platforms such as Vice, before they went all sensitive, of course. Gonzo journalism was a direct and present rejection of the prevailing media culture, one of clean, upper-class TV presenters who looked like they'd call the police over a kid riding a motorbike or skateboarding. These journalists were gritty and edgy. They showed society for what it was, and every corner of it, from the most depraved to the most beautiful. It left out no blemishes and presented it for what it was. And the picture was unnerving. The reality of a society plagued by the threat of nuclear war, injustice and state control. However, the joy, freedom and self-governance of rock and roll and the counterculture would unfortunately not last forever. A movement so big and such a threat to state interests is, of course, as we know from history, desperate to be hijacked, and by the 1990s and 1980s, with early warning signs showing in the late 1970s, the counterculture would quickly be subverted. High-ranking globalist and socialist interests would hijack this movement to create what we know as Agenda 2030. In other words, they convinced these once freedom-loving individuals that liberalism must be performed by an overarching state structure, and any threats to it must be subdued in an almost Stasi-esque fashion. That the aspect of nationhood doesn't exist, and that it is up to the state to tell you what a nation is or should be, not up to the people who live in said nation. And who would have thought that the people that once prescribed so eagerly to bodily autonomy allow themselves to be stuck with a Pfizer vaccine by the likes of Mr. Dog Experiments, Anthony Fauci, and then complain when people don't conform to such blatant state tyranny as the lockdowns or mask wearing, and call for those people to be arrested and put in camps. This subversion, and the end of what was the true counterculture, is reflected in the following passages of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Strange memories on this nervous night in Las Vegas. 5 years later, 6, it seems like a lifetime, or at least a main era. The kind of peak that never comes again. San Francisco in the middle 60s was a very special time and place to be a part of. Maybe it meant something, maybe not, in the long run, but no explanation, no mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you were there and alive, in that corner of time and the world, whatever it meant. History is hard to know because of all the hired bullshit, but even without being sure of history, it seems entirely reasonable to think that every now and then the energy of a whole generation comes to a head in a long, fine flash, for reasons that nobody really understands at the time, and which never explain, in retrospect, what actually happened. My central memory of that time seems to hang on 1 or 4 or maybe 40 nights, or very early mornings, when I left the Fillmore half crazy and instead of going home, aimed the big 650 Lightning across the Bay Bridge at 100 miles an hour, wearing LL Bean shorts and a Butte sheep herder's jacket, booming through the Treasure Island tunnel at the lights of Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond, not quite sure which turn off to take when I got to the other end, always stalling at the toll gate, too twisted to find neutral while I fumbled for change. But being absolutely certain that no matter which way I went, I would come to a place where people were just as high and as wild as I was. No doubt at all about that. There was madness in any direction, at any hour. If not across the bay, then up the Golden Gate or down the 101 to Los Altos or La Honda. You could strike sparks anywhere. There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right and that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle. That sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. There was no point in fighting, on our side or theirs. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west, and with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.